It is 11:33. You are listening to the Maryam B Khan Dissects show on Salam Media, and it's time for the marriage segment. So please note that the following topic that we will be discussed has content of an adult nature. So if there are any minors in the room, we ask that you exit the room. Parents, get your minors out of the room, and if they still want to stay in the room, don't worry. The interview will be up on Facebook and you can listen to it or watch it a little later on in your own free time. So, the topic we are discussing today is the dangers and the impact of pornography addiction on a marriage and how addicts can be helped with our marriage counselor or marriage coach and a sexologist, Dr. Maryam B. Khan. Compulsive sexual behaviors and pornography addiction affect men and women, regardless of race or financial status. And those inside the church or mosque are not immune. Pornography is a visual representation of sexuality which distorts an individual's concept of the nature of conjugal relations. To join us, to tell us more is Dr. Maryam B Khan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Doctor.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We finally get to speak about this topic.
Yes, finally. I think we have waited a bit too long for it, but there's no time like the present. So, alhamdulillah, we have the opportunity to do so. Shukran for joining me once again. Now, first of all, how does pornography addiction impact on a marriage?
Okay, so I'm glad that you spoke about compulsive disorders and compulsions, because I'm going to start there before I get into how it impacts a marriage. Now, we have in the past discussed sexual addiction, and we know that as with sexual addiction, pornography addiction is not officially listed as a disorder in the DSM-5 or any of the previous editions. So the DSM-5 is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, and this is the textbook that's used by healthcare professionals, more specifically mental health care professionals, in making diagnosis in terms of mental disorders. So this is not a diagnosis per se, according to the DSM-5 or any of its previous editions. Whilst I say that there are professional organizations that have some kind of framework for behavioral addictions, and what they take into account are things like a preoccupation to the point of obsession with sexual imagery. So say, for example, spending at least 11 hours or more a week searching for or looking at pornography, then a loss of control of the use of pornography, and any kind of negative consequences that might arise from this behavior. So this will be similar to the negative consequences that arise from any other addiction, like, for example, alcohol addiction, drug addiction, or with compulsive spenders or compulsive gamblers. Now, pornography addiction is often coupled with compulsive masturbation, and this may be considered as a form of sexual addiction. So they may be engaged in other forms of sexually addictive behavior. So they may be engaged in virtual sex games or a series of online or personal face-to-face hookups, so to speak. But for the most part, it's the rush they get from looking and fantasizing about erotic imagery. So this is what we are talking about, right? When we speak about pornography addiction per se. So some professionals understand it as a compulsion and others as an addiction. And there's a fine line between the two. Both involve a lack of control. Compulsions are repetitive behavior. So it's a behavior that we do repeatedly with no rational motivation, but it's often engaged in to reduce anxiety. Addictions, on the other hand, involve an inability to stop the behavior. Now, taking all that into consideration, how does this impact a marriage? I think it's important to understand how people feel about pornography in the first place. So do they feel indifferent about it, or do they feel offended by it? How do they frame it in terms of religion, in terms of their own understandings and comfort levels or discomfort levels with sex and sexual content? Some research shows that pornography creates unrealistic expectations of sex. This is very common. Some research shows that it decreases sexual satisfaction, and conflicting research shows that it increases sexual satisfaction. And There are small studies done in this area. Some have shown that it actually increases sexual satisfaction for some women. Now, pornography addiction can impact marriages. Yeah, I see these eyebrows there. I think you're disagreeing with that study, Mariam. Pornography addiction can impact marriages with financial effects, broken trust, the risk of separation and divorce. So there are studies that link pornography addiction to divorce and increased divorce rates. Also, I think it can lower the sense of self-esteem, your self-worth, if you're the partner of a pornography addict, and we're using that term very loosely today. You can also suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, depending on how you react to your partner having this kind of compulsive behavior. So being married to someone who has this kind of compulsion or an addiction does take its toll, whether it's spiritually, emotionally, physically, psychologically, financially, it does take its toll on a marriage. Usually the one partner with the other partner, so the partner who is not involved or engaged in the addictive or compulsive behavior, is the one that then has to take the entire household by the reins. So they're taking responsibility for almost everything, and that is bound to lead to some kind of negative behavior on their part, and it will impact the marriage in that regard.
Now, speaking about the partner, is it normal for them to blame themselves for their partner's addiction?
So, I thought about this and I don't know if it's normal. I do know that it's not uncommon. So, I think that what we need to understand is this is something that's their problem. That's their problem that they have to deal with whilst you will be with them in terms of, helping them go through if and when they do acknowledge it's a problem. But there's no body type, there's no skin color, there's no body shape, there's no sexual position, there's no, specific set of lingerie that you can get at a store that's going to prevent your partner's compulsive behavior. So, they first have to acknowledge that they have a problem for you to be able to address the problem. But to take blame on yourself doesn't really help the situation. What it does, it leads to enhanced or heightened feelings of low self-worth, low self-esteem, and that doesn't help the situation. So probably the best way that you can address it, or the best way that you can work on your marriage, it might seem counterintuitive, but it is to work on yourself. So it's to work on your self-esteem, to work on healing your trauma from finding out, or from the way you responded, or the way you found out, or how you're reacting or handling this kind of behavior by your partner. So that would be the best way. And whilst I'm not sure if it's normal to blame yourself, I do know it's very common.
I mean, yeah, I think a person would think that they are the problem, that blame themselves, say perhaps I don't look a certain way, or perhaps I didn't do that, or perhaps it always comes down to you thinking that maybe you are the problem, hence your partner going down that route, but your partner probably had this problem before they even met you. Now,
I
what do
don't
you?
think
Yeah.
Sorry, I don't think people just get up at like 35 years old, 20, or 30 years old, 40 years old, and just decide, I'm now going to be addicted to pornography or to erotic imagery. I think it's something they've probably come into the marriage with, something that, began a long time ago. And I think the idea of, you blaming yourself or finding faults in yourself also maybe, more common in people who feel themselves, they see themselves as the fixers, they see themselves as the need to, they need to behave or engage in certain activity in order to please their partners or to keep their partners happy. But we're not responsible for other people's happiness. We are responsible to a certain extent of how we behave, how we control our actions, but we're not responsible for other people's happiness.
Yeah, we're not responsible, but we can contribute to their happiness. Now, what do you do when you
Absolutely.
find out that your partner has been living a secret life with their pornographic addiction or habit or behavior? Like you said, we're using addiction loosely today. So, what do you do when you find out they've been living the secret life? I mean, we just now spoke about the blame and these feelings of uncertainty, and you're not sure where you stand.
I think this is the same as if you had found out that your partner was, on alcohol, taking alcohol or abusing alcohol, or if you're in a Muslim, relationship with a Muslim person and yourself you're Muslim and you understand and frame alcohol as haram, it would be the same thing as if you found out your partner drinks alcohol or your partner smokes and you thought they never smoked. So similar, your approach in terms of how would you approach any problem. Again, it also depends on how you frame that particular problem. Maybe someone might not see smoking as bad as they may take or handle pornography, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it would depend on how you approach the problem. Again, what kind of communication strategies do you have in a relationship? How did you find out? Did you find out accidentally? Were you snooping through their phone or through their laptop or their search history? So how did you find out? Did you catch them in the act? What are your own thoughts about pornography? Is there shame involved? How do you frame it in terms of your religious ideas and your religious beliefs? And what is your relationship with yourself? And I think that would lead to, ideas of how and what would you do? Because it would be different for everyone. So a person who is generally volatile with their emotions might blow up. And someone who's a little bit more strategic might try to find a different approach. I think in terms of relationships, we always want to go with a gentle approach because the idea is to nurture and save that relationship and protect that relationship. The relationship and maintaining that relationship is important, especially if we love that person and we value that person's place in our lives, their input in our lives. So I think that you should take into consideration when you do, and if you do find out your partner is indulging in this behavior and you want to approach the situation.
Mm-hmm. All right. We are talking about the impact of pornography addiction on a marriage with Dr. Maryam B Khan. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comment section. Dr. Maryam, we're going to take a quick break and we'll continue when we return.
You are listening to Maryam Makwanda live on Salam Media.
As we look forward to our summer days, there are thousands of refugees in Afghanistan and Lebanon who will not survive their winter. You can change that by sponsoring an AMA Winter Rescue Kit for 3,500 rands. Contact Africa Muslims Agency now on 011 834 8685 or donate online at africamuslimsagency.co.za. Africa Muslims Agency, inspiring the spirit of giving.
Enduran Boys College ke sekolo sa boarding and day se se ikemego se agilwe meleng wa lephefo wa N1 Polokwane. Re tlhotlheletsa thuto ye tlhwatlhwa ya monagano le maikutlo lefelong la maleba la go akaretsa botlhe. Re busha re latela melago ya NCS CAPS curriculum ra ba ra neela ka madulo a bashimane ba mphato wa botshelela go fitla ka marematlou ebile re tla boarding ka mphato wa botshelela go fitla ka marematlou. Enduran College ke go fana ka thuto ya boleng jwa maemo a godimo yo go tlhotlheletsa go botho. Enduran College ke legae la bobedi la polokego le totego. E ngwadisitswe le lefapha la thuto e le go Umalusi. E go ka botlalo e hwetša nomorong ya 078-452-6264 078-452-6264. Re hwetša gape go Facebook le Instagram goba o re romele email go polokwane@endurancolleges.co.za.
What makes Randery Jewelers the optimum place for your memorable gift? Is it our range of exclusive, high-end, luxurious jewellery? Or is it our master craftsmanship of all your bespoke jewellery needs? We believe it's because at Randery Jewelers, we know just how to make your special moments last forever. Whether it's for a wedding, anniversary, or just a simple gift to show your love, trust Randery Jewelers to make it special. www.randeryjewelers.com. Make your moments last forever with Randery Jewelers, the family name you can trust.
Connect and stay ahead with Salam Media. This is Salam Media coming to you live from South Africa.
Welcome back. You are listening to the Maryam B Khan Dissects show on Salam Media. It is 11:48 on this Tuesday, the 9th of February 2021. Please note that the following content is of an adult nature, and if you have any minors in the room, please let them leave ASAP. We are talking about the impact and dangers of pornography addiction on a marriage, and hopefully we'll find ways to help the addict or the person with the pornographic with such behavior. Still joining me on the line is Dr. Maryam B Khan. Shukran for staying with us, Dr. Maryam. Now, earlier
I don't
on,
think I had time.
earlier on, we were talking about blaming oneself or blaming yourself for your spouse's wrongdoings or for your spouse's behaviors, rather. And it brings me to the question of, can you save your partner? And I'm also using the word save loosely because, I mean, you're not there to save them, but you're there to help them get through things together, just like you're not there to make them happy, but to contribute to their happiness.
Absolutely. So, we've got to move away from the idea of having to save our partners or save anybody for that matter. I think when you use the word save in terms of a physical disaster or that kind of, concern would be differently. So if you see someone, in some kind of physical danger and you need to save them, that's different from this situation. I think that it's important for the person to acknowledge that it's a problem, right? That's more important. And they must also want to do something about it. They must see the impact that it's having on the relationship and on their family, and they must want to take positive steps to address this problem. And how do you highlight that for them? So, or even for the person, maybe there's someone watching or listening to us who's not sure if they have this kind, whether it's a compulsion. So they do indulge in pornography and they're not sure whether it is an addiction or a compulsion. So look at the time and the amount of time you spend watching porn or searching for porn. And is it increasing? Is there an increasing need to keep searching and looking for new material or to continue watching porn? Do you feel as though you need a porn fix? So say you're not feeling well, you're not feeling in good spirits and you're feeling down and you need a porn fix. So you need to watch porn to feel good about yourself or to give you that high. Also, do you feel guilty about the consequences of viewing porn? How much of time you spend, does it mean you're neglecting responsibilities in your family or at the workplace? So take this into consideration. Do you also insist that your partner indulge or engage in these kind of behaviors that you see and they're not comfortable with it and you insist? Are you not able to enjoy sex unless and until you view porn first, or until your partner, or unless your partner engages in those particular activities? And are you unable to resist it? And is it disrupting your life? So I think that people need to take these into consideration, and then you'll have an idea. It's kind of like a guideline or framework if this is a serious concern, because there's a difference between, and we're not talking about the halal and the haram of it. We're talking about, there's a difference between the occasional curiosity or every now and then, with technology, it's almost inevitable that you come across some kind of pornographic, erotic imagery, right? Some might consider bikini adverts to be just bikini adverts. Others might consider it to be pornographic material. So it's almost impossible for us to not encounter this. And I think that this became a real concern when we were looking at the ideas of switching from WhatsApp to different communication platforms. We found that other platforms made it easier for children to be exposed to pornographic material. Also, other concerns would be like, do you have trouble having an orgasm with your partner until or unless you've watched porn, or unless your partner has engaged in that kind of activity that you've seen and that you feel some kind of desire toward or about? Do you have an increase in dysfunction? So those kind of ideas will give you a guideline. Thereafter, once the person has acknowledged that they have a problem, and they make some kind of effort and they made a decision that, look, I want to address this problem and I'd like your assistance. You can't force your assistance on someone. So you can't force help on someone. They must want that. Then you can take steps, whether those steps mean before you see a professional, so before you see a therapist or a psychologist, on your own or after, and alongside whatever the therapist or the psychologist suggests. There's software that you can use, like anti-porn software. There are filtering software that you could use to prevent yourself from having access to pornographic material. You get accountability software that gives you an email on a regular basis to tell you which sites you've visited, or to tell another person who you've given that responsibility to, so that they can also be a part of this journey. And so there are lots of things that you can do to support your partner. One of them would not be shaming, would not be repeatedly reminding them, that this is what you're doing and this is the reason we have problems in the marriage. So you've got to be very gentle. You've got to not put blame on the person, no shaming, and then you can go forward with it. But again, I must stress that it can't be a one-sided thing. You can't decide that you're going to be the policeman in the relationship, and you're going to police all the activities. It might lead to more strain on the marriage, and you might actually get divorced as a result.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it has this problem has caused a lot of divorces and broken marriages, because the issue is not addressed. It's not addressed accordingly, and sometimes it's as if marriage is just a gateway for the addiction to die down, that a person goes into a marriage having this addiction or this behavioral problem, and once they get married and they find themselves a spouse, and they will now be able to have these sexual pleasures, and they don't have to worry about the addiction anymore. And this is such a misconception, and it's a big problem in our communities. So how do we start addressing such a problem?
So I think I think the answer lies there in what you just said. I think part of it has to do with, why do we even get married? How much of us are very honest? How many of us are honest about why we get married? And there are many parents out there that push children into marriages because children are engaging in these kind of behaviors, and they feel like, once they get married, they'll settle down, they won't do that anymore, or the wife will straighten them out, or she'll fix them. So they put that responsibility on the spouse, on the wife. Usually it's on the wife. It's not as common. Pornography is not as common amongst women, though there is a growing trend where women are engaging in terms of viewing pornography. It's not as common amongst women as it is amongst men. So to really ask yourself, why are you getting married? Or if you're the parent, why are you pushing your child towards getting married? Getting married does not solve those problems. And if you get married for the wrong reasons, it just creates a bigger problem. Because now you have you and your, whatever your concerns may be, and then you bring another person into that equation. So I think part of it has to be that we need to address these ideas of marriage and why are we getting married in the first place. Just saying because it's part of your sunnah, it's completing half of your iman, is not sufficient. We need to be in that mindset where we are ready to get married. We're ready to commit to ourselves to someone else. We're ready to commit ourselves to growing with someone else, to sharing and growing and to becoming better people. So, and part of that involves talking about your values and your principles and what you want out of life. And also what your demons are, what you're facing, why are you getting married? So if you're getting married so that there's halal sex, then that's not, whilst it's noble that you don't want to have haram sex, but that's not a sufficient reason to get married. That just, so that I have access to halal sex. Because then it also puts pressure on this person, on the wife usually, to constantly be available for sex. Usually there's no emotion involved in that kind of sexual contact and that kind of intimacy. So we need to go back and look at, why do people get married, and address it from there.
All right. Actually, I was looking at the time and I'm like, okay, we still have 1 minute left. One quick question. So can a person act out these acts that they view on minors? Do we often have such issues?
Okay, so there's a term for that, right? So when an adult or an older adolescent experiences, whether it's a primary or it's an exclusive sexual attraction to prepubescent children, and I'm assuming you're talking about prepubescent children when you're saying minors.
Yeah.
This is referred to as pedophilia, and this is actually a psychiatric disorder. So I have come across data that links, internet child pornography to child sexual abuse and pedophilia. But what we're generally talking about is pornography that involves adults. And I have not come across data that links, watching pornography to child sexual abuse as such, except if it is pedophilia, So watching child pornography and linking that to pedophilia. So we've got to be very careful there that we don't assign incorrect mental diagnosis to people. So in terms of that, no, I'm assuming that not necessarily the link between your regular, and I'm saying it so loosely, your regular P&V pornography, and in terms of it being, and that's being adults, and in terms of it opposed to being child pornography and pedophilia.
All right,
I hope that
Dr.
answered that.
Maryam. Yes. Shukran so much for your time, but there are some people who might be feeling uncomfortable with asking questions on this platform. So if you don't mind sharing your contact details with us, please do so.
So my mobile number is 079-380-8449, and you can find me on social media. It's at Dr. Maryam B Khan.
All right. Shukran so much for your time once again, and have a wonderful day. Assalamu alaikum.
You too. Jazakallah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
That was Dr. Maryam B Khan unpacking the dangers and impact of pornography addiction on a marriage, and how addicts can get help. But it first comes down to staying true to yourself, owning your truth, and admitting that you have a problem. The first step to getting help is to admit that you do have a problem, and then you can take the necessary steps there. But do not brush the issue under the carpet, pretending as if it's not there and that it will eventually die down and go away. They usually don't, and they do tend to resurface. And if there is no intervention, immediate intervention, then the problem will become bigger than what it already is. So you can find Maryam Khan as Dr. Maryam Khan on social media, and you can leave your comments with her if you are shy to send them on this platform. It is understandable. Thank you for joining us. We will be right back after the break.